Voltaire had it right in 1729. Paper money eventually always returns. I put the word always in there, but paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value, zero. Why does it do that? Well, because people are people. And this wasn't a statement about why paper money is necessarily a bad thing. It's not. What's necessarily a bad thing is that people are people, right? You know what they say about community? Everybody wants community. Problem is it involves other people, right? People sometimes don't make the best decisions, and sometimes they make short-sighted decisions that are not in the collective best interest. The reason this happens is because people are people, and people don't always make the best decisions. And in fact, you can count on people to make the wrong decisions. In fact, you can count on people to drive paper money to zero. Because what are they going to do? They're going to print more of it. You know, if we just print a little today, nobody will really notice. Instead of doing the right thing for tomorrow, or people who come after me, I haven't even met them. You know, that seems to be the story over and over again, whether we're talking about, and by the way, silver and gold, silver in particular back in Roman times, that also trundled towards zero as they figured out ways of debasing that currency, meaning using base metals, the literal debasing of silver, to the point that the Romans, clever people that they are, figured out how to electroplate silver around lead slugs to bring the silver content down to a whopping 0.02% or something like that. That was pretty impressive considering they didn't have electricity. So whatever chemical reaction they figured out how to run that with, very, very intelligent. So, but that's just people being people. So now here's, if you want to be misinformed, disinformed, malinformed about anything, I guess you can just turn now to the news. And so here is Greg Ip, who's a longtime Federal Reserve reporter who doesn't ask any questions that are difficult, which is why Greg continues to be invited to write fluff pieces like this about the Fed. Great career he's carved out for himself. It just doesn't involve doing any actual journalism in the sense of asking hard questions that somebody doesn't want to have asked. Everything else is stenography and biography, right? So I have never accused Greg of being a journalist, and I probably won't start here today with this piece either. So here he's written a piece that came out on May 23rd of 2023 here, titled "Why Inflation Erupted. Two Top Economists Have the Answer." So this is Ben Bernanke, former chair of the Federal Reserve, and Olivier Blanchard, former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund. Quote, they say here, "For 2 years, debate has raged over what caused the highest inflation since the 1980s, government stimulus or pandemic-related disruptions. Triangulating towards a Reese's peanut butter cup solution, they say, now two of the country's top economists have an answer. It's both." Why not both? Let's not argue anymore. Let's set up a stupid straw man and then declare it's both, right? Pandemic-related supply shocks explain why inflation shot up in 2021. In part, there is cost-push inflation. It's a thing. That was part of it. And second, an economy overheated by fiscal stimulus and low interest rates, which is on the Fed, by the way, explain why it has stayed high ever since. The conclusion: for inflation to fade, the economy has to cool off, which means a weaker labor market, which means working people are going to have to kind of get the shaft, right? So note here what they didn't say, which was, could it be money printing by the bank and the banking establishment and the central bank? Because they didn't mention any of this, right? That whole article. Thanks, Greg, for not asking Bernanke, hey, dude, you sure it's not possible that maybe possibly just a little bit that it was money printing? That somehow with the big banks here now up, that's the Fed, the ECB, the Bank of Japan, and the People's Bank of China, right? A 500% increase in money from 2007 through to 2023. Maybe that had something to do with it, because as we know, inflation is everywhere and always a monetary phenomenon. This is the headwaters of the Nile. This is plain old money printing. And for them, get my drawing tool out here, for them to have just skipped over this little piece of history right here, right? Where starting in 2020, by the end of 2021, these banks had collectively printed, what's that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. What's that? 10 or 11 trillion dollars, where all of history, all of human history, combined world history, up through 2007 had only required 5 trillion of printing way back here. They printed twice that amount in less than 2 years. And then they write articles explaining that it must have been, I think it was the government spending too much money. No, you know what it could have been? I think it could have been supply shocks. Absolving themselves, hand washing of everything. This is just how it goes. This is misinformation, this disinformation. This is stupid. It's patently stupid. It's provably stupid in the sense that it leaves out the main driving force of inflation, which is this. And by the way, this chart right here is all you need to know to really understand the prediction of saying, gosh, are we facing a future of inflation or deflation? The answer is every single time central banks have been confronted with a crisis, and believe me, deflation is a crisis, they've printed. And nothing has stopped them so far, and nothing will stop them from another round of printing. So the only question is when, not if, in this story. So there will be more printing. Now, I think we're going to see moderation of inflation, which perversely allows central banks to print more. They want inflation to come down. Somebody has been monkeying around in the oil futures markets, dumping huge quantities of them, which helps drive down the energy part of this, which if I was a central banker trying to control inflation as best I could, I would be doing the same thing. And the reason for that is very simple. Oil is a factor in the cost input of literally everything out there, right? If it traveled by a car, a truck, or a train, oil was involved. If it was manufactured out of plastics, oil was involved. If it used an energy-intensive mining process, oil was involved. That's everything, right? So oil is basically involved in food production, textiles, ores, minerals, fabrication, transport, moving stuff. It's involved in everything. So if you want the price of everything to go down a little, you could do worse than to slam the price of oil, which is a thing that I believe they've been doing. And so they're going to get this inflation down by hook or by crook, and then they can print more because inflation's down, right? So in Europe, the future of inflation to me looks like it's about to go down a lot and possibly go into negative territory before too much longer. And the reason for that is what we're tracking here are two separate things. In white is M2, which is a broad definition of money. So this white line here, you see it come down like that and bounce around. This is M2. That includes money market funds, corporate treasury accounts, all your checking deposits, savings deposits, currency in circulation. M2 is pretty broad. Not a completely broad definition, but pretty broad. And here we can see something remarkable in this data series, which starts in 1997. So this goes back quite a ways. We've never seen M2 year-over-year growth. So this is in percentage terms. So up here, it would have been 12% year-over-year growth, which is pretty aggressive. But down here, where its last reading is at 0.9, it hasn't been this low anywhere else on this chart going back. So that money supply is now contracting in Europe. And as you can see, there's somewhat of a relationship. Not always here you can see it's going up, but inflation really didn't go anywhere because Eurozone inflation is also year over year, and it's in the yellow line down below. But here you can see like money growth comes down, crashing down. Inflation comes crashing down. Of course, that's the great financial crisis. Then there was the crisis of 2011 here. And so again, inflation's coming down. Here there's a little decline. It's coming down. And then you see this big bolt up. You see this big bolt up. And then now money growth is coming down. So prediction, this line is also going to come down, kind of like that over time. So that's what we would expect. Even more to the point would be this, which is M1 money growth. M1 is a much narrower definition of money. This is basically just currency, checking accounts, savings accounts, and some money market funds. Now here on this case, what we're seeing, you see month over month annualized in red, quarter over quarter, which is smoothed by quarters in blue. Black is annualized, so that's a 12-month average there. But here we can see that on all bases, we don't have lower readings for each one of those. The red line's never been lower, the blue line's never been lower, and the black line's never been lower, at least on this chart, which doesn't go back that far, but it goes back to 2007. So M1 growth means money supply is now shrinking. How do you shrink a money supply? You kind of have to have debt destruction. You have to have some reason to cause that money to actually contract. It's being taken out of M1 and put somewhere else, right? And the typical way for that to happen is for debts to collapse and or be paid off, right? So they're either written down or they're paid off, in which case we're seeing a contraction in economic activity. And if we have that, inflation tends to follow that. So less economic activity, less inflation. So this is a pretty significant reading. I'm looking at Europe as potentially getting into a lot of trouble recession-wise over this next year. This chart is part of it. This chart is part of it. So when we're talking about inflation, best prediction, you were going to see inflation really moderate in Europe, moderate hard, and then people are going to get scared. Then they're going to issue the dreaded D word, which is deflation, and then the central bank's going to take that as green light license to go forward and print and print and print and print more because, hey, that's what they do. All right, in the UK, slightly different story. So I was talking about Europe there before. UK is on its own path here, and they have their own money system and all that, right? So the UK shop price inflation reached its highest rate for 18 years in May. Despite the pace of food price growth marginally easing, according to new sector data, the cost of shop items rose at an annual rate of 9% last month. That is a big number, up from 8.8% April, so this is getting worse, not better. The good news, such as it is that food inflation decelerated slightly from 15.4% in May, falling from an all-time record high of 15.7% in the previous month. If the money system breaks down, that all shreds. Supply chains break down, jobs go away, prosperity dries up, lots of bad things happen, and our money system is being completely, purposely debased. And I'm positive that they're going to create some sort of a crisis that's then going to be the reason to have to usher everybody into their central bank digital currency cul-de-sac box canyon of a corral that ultimately will be the place where they close the gates and then there's naught to be done. So we have to understand the context. We have to know inflation. We have to be able to take some of our chips off the table. We have to know how to dodge that wealth transfer that's coming. Hard assets, good people, and having great context. Those are the ways that we get through this. So with that, love to know what you think. Let's talk about all this down below. And again, I read all the comments. So let me know what you think. Thanks very much for listening. It's been great being here with you. See you soon. Bye-bye.